Good evening all, and welcome. I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you who commented and liked and interacted in the last video I released. Your support really meant a lot, so thank you from the bottom of my heart. Lastly, today, well, because it's 1 AM now, or tomorrow if you're in the States, is my wife's birthday, the 15th of January. So, if you could, and you'd like to, feel free to wish her a happy birthday. I'm sure that she'll be very pleasantly surprised in tomorrow morning's comment section. Don't worry, I'm going to take her somewhere nice. But anyway, for now guys, I hope you're ready. And be warned, some of these stories are very disturbing, so proceed with caution. It's time to let the darkness take control. Before I begin, I think it's important to give you a little bit of background. I am currently 20 years old, but when these events occurred, I was between 15 and 17. I had never downloaded Tor and used basic software as I'm not very tech savvy. Nor did I really believe in the hype of the deep web. I never found a red room, nor convincing murders. But I do have some messed up stories. One in particular, revolving around airplane crashes. This site had hundreds of black box recordings, and you could listen to them uncensored. They contained recordings of everything from plane crashes to hijackings. I'm a morbid person, so naturally I listened to a few of them. If you have a weak stomach, I don't suggest ever seeking out this site. You could hear people crying, praying, screaming, in addition to the sounds of crashes and the impacts and gunshots. The worst was a pilot speaking to what sounded like himself during what he communicated to be total engine failure. He was the pilot of a passenger plane carrying 4 families out of China. There are small descriptions of the planes and pilots and what happened under each audio file. In it, you could hear him praying, the controls making frantic sounds, and his frantic, panicked voice slowly receded to a ghost relative of acceptance. I will never forget the absolute fear in his voice, while he spoke what I assume was Chinese, and I couldn't make a sense of his words. His tone told me exactly what he was doing. The movies don't give an accurate description of fear. They don't convey the helplessness of a human trapped in a flying tin can in the sky as it falls back to land. I felt as if I was with him as I heard the plane make impact. I witnessed his final moments through my headphones, and I heard the moment that little black box stopped recording. The description said the plane that crashed held no survivors, and there were over 40 small children on board. I don't know the details of what happened, since the site was just brief descriptions and audio files, but the voices I heard were real people, and it will haunt me for a very long time. This was fairly tame compared to what I found next. Human trafficking, the cattle ranch. Cliché, I know. Everyone and their mothers has some story about human trafficking from the deep web. No, I don't have men come to my door to whisk me or my family away. However, I found a human cattle submission site. Now it is entirely possible that the site was fake and plastered onto the darker crack of the alley, that in the internet is just for lols. But by no means am I here to tell you that everything I saw was 100% real life sites with bogeymen up to no good. But as far as creep factor, it was pretty high. Someone was sick enough in their heads to make the site and pay to keep it. Now upon clicking the link, you are brought to a large red flashing 1999-esque text reading, "Welcome to the ranch," and just below you could browse the cattle. Images of women looking from ages 16 to 45 with brief descriptions of what they were used for. They only had their first names displayed, and besides the name was voluntary or involuntary. The descriptions were volatile, explaining that specific women were used for breeding and meat or play. The meat was to be pre-cut to your specifications, packaged discreetly, and mailed to you within 2 business days. Those determined for breeding were given ages, how many children they'd had thus far, and brief stories on their life before the ranch. The descriptions even went so far to say who gave them to the ranch, if they were listed as involuntary. Many were donated by husbands, boyfriends, and families looking for money, revenge, or some other unexplained reason. And lastly, those given up for play. I have a strong stomach, but the descriptions of this made me retch a bit. These people were to be sent to the ranch to learn how to be pets. These women had no available names. All of them were marked as involuntary, and each had a description of what the donor wanted done to them. Graphic descriptions of sexual assault, physical tortures, and amputations. When the women eventually died, the page listed what they would expect to be done with the corpses. It didn't end there. At the very bottom of the page was a link to a PDF file that could be printed and mailed or submitted online. The form was for donation of cattle. On it, you could list why the person was there, the basic health of the person, voluntary or involuntary, and who you were to the person, and additional notes if you had any. The owner of the page proudly left his or her own note that all cattle was discreet and they dealt primarily using Bitcoin and PayPal. Refunds were prohibited, and ended on a cheerful note of enjoy your meal. I don't know the validity of the site, but it made for an interesting find. This adventure led to the contemporary death of my old Dell dinosaur. It was about a cannibal cult. This is my final entry. I don't know if this cult is exactly cannibalistic, but they alluded to it. I got interested in a creepypasta story called useless.avi. It was pretty popular back when creepypasta was still a big thing. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, useless.avi was supposed to be a video of a woman, naked, tied to a bed and left alone with a chimp that was emaciated and abused. As one would expect, the chimp graphically maws and eats her. The video cuts to a naked man in a mask licking a toilet, and then blackness. The video cuts. I had heard a lot of rumours about the video and decided to look into it. Being in high school and working part-time, I had a lot of free time over breaks. In the evenings, I visited forums and chats dedicated to debunking creepypasta, and it all pointed to the video being fake, until I came across a thread titled, "How Useless Can You Be?" I don't remember what site it was on. I pretty much just randomly clicked and crossed my fingers. Anyhow, a user mentioned seeing the video before it was removed on the site, and had saved it. Too good to be true? Yeah, it was a hoax account, but it luckily prompted an active member of this cult to post, and post he did. He had created a web page for the cult he called Revision of Humanity, or something to that extent. On it he had many videos created by the group meant to be art installations to provoke thought regarding human behaviour. The cult had simple origins and were self-proclaimed freedom thinkers out to wreck the US government. However, they took a dark turn when a member wanted to leave, leading to useless.avi, or at least a rough interpretation of it. The poster had the useless video amongst many other short videos. They were all fake, and the members acted as actors, except in Useless. The woman in Useless was a member that wanted to leave. The chimp was a pet of the leader who failed to care for it and lost his temper at it. The woman was truly killed in the video, and it was graphic, although extremely grainy. The poster made mention that the majority of the cult had disbanded after the woman's body was found, and the leader and 10 members were tried and convicted for a slew of crimes, including, but not limited to, murder, rape, petty theft, and animal neglect. The poster went on to say that he wanted to recreate the cult, and left on a message board that if you do not understand, then you are part of the problem. Terminate yourself for salvation of the masses. I laughed it off as just another poser, and assumed it was a hoax until I went to exit my browser, and found that my screen had frozen. Fed up after 5 minutes, I resorted to holding down the power button. It would not shut off. I unplugged the damn thing, as it only had power when it was plugged in. The battery was crap, and it didn't shut off. I plugged it back in and tried to exit using the escape key when the screen started violently flashing error messages, and then finally flashing black and white with the words, "part of the problem," slathered all over my screen like sunscreen left on the hands of a toddler. The speakers started blaring static with chanting voices that I couldn't make out, other than a low hum. My screen suddenly went blue with what looked like random codes, and then shut off. I was unable to turn it on for almost 2 weeks. For a month after that, every time I tried to access a web page, the computer would redirect me to the cult page. After about a month, it all sort of stopped. Smart troll using a programmed virus? A genuine cult? I don't know. I don't concern myself with it much. It makes for an interesting story, even if it is boring to deep web standards. I need to buy myself off the deep web before somebody else does. I don't know how much time I have. I saw the offer hours ago. The only thing I can do now is tell you how I happened upon it myself. It's stupid, really. Really, really stupid. I was trying to impress my friends. We were all enrolled in IT class at our school. We would take turns seeing who could bring up the most screwed up website. It started out by showing our friends websites on the deep web that people could buy drugs from. Drugs that we had never heard of. That got boring really quick. Other friends began upping their content to try and stand out in our game of I'm more tech savvy than you. They would bring more and more pictures, each more disturbing and gruesome than the last. Pictures of people dying, of people being tortured, and unimaginable things. People that were already dead. One person brought up a very nefarious site, PC. Instead of people saying exactly how screwed up this was, and how this should all stop, and how this should have never have begun in the first place, and how stupid it was, and how much danger we were all in, they congratulated her, gave her a pat on the back, and asked her how she could even sit down properly in a computer chair because of how big her balls were. I felt like puking. I felt like beating the ever-loving crap out of everybody, and I couldn't believe how screwed up it was to see all that disgusting stuff on the internet and see it as an accomplishment. I didn't say anything though. They began to notice that I never showed off anything myself, and I began to get a new nickname at school. School became a living hell for me. My friends began shoving these horrible pictures in my face whenever they could. When I cried and vomited, they claimed they were trying to desensitize me. Everything became too much though. I promised myself I wouldn't venture too deep, that I would only stay long enough to find something that would appease them. At this point, we were long past the point of finding cool drugs and stuff. I knew I had to find something that would hold importance. At this point, I had been on the deep web for 3 hours. 5 hours was what it took to put an offer for me on the deep web. At one point, I remember opening a seemingly blank page. Immediately, the light next to my computer flashed, briefly. I minimized the browser to close Photo Booth, only to find that it wasn't open, and I didn't think anything of it. I was tired and had school the next day, so, bored, I closed everything down and went to sleep. The next few days went the same, until the last. When I walked in, everyone was huddled around one desk, talking in hushed voices. A few of the girls were crying, and all of them were pale and covered in sweat. I didn't want to see whatever had caused this reaction. Nobody noticed I'd walked in, until class had started. I caught several of them staring at me during the class. They had probably planned a new way to make me go home sobbing. I had tried to leave the class as quickly as I could, but one of them caught me by the shoulder and spun me around. "We need to talk." His voice was quivering, and his clammy, trembling hands were soaking through my t-shirt. He led me to the back of the classroom, where other students in the same shape as him, or worse, were huddled. He began passing out pictures. When it was my turn, I told him that I didn't want to see whatever they had. "No, you have to see this." Something about the way he said it told me that it was serious, and it wasn't just regular bullying. I cracked open one eye. I saw some girl on the paper, along with some sort of description and a price. I opened my eyes further and saw that it was an ad of some sort. I thought, oh, this isn't that bad. It hadn't fully hit me yet until I read what sort of description it was. "Hi, it's me again, back with some more for you guys. This one looks fairly young, with a bit of extra weight on her. I don't know, I need to get more pictures. I think it was her first time here. She wasn't protected at all, and it was easy enough. But enough about that. For now, her starting price is $118,000. We'll go up and down whenever we get more pictures and do the physical inspection. Anyway, we'll keep you updated." There was a picture of me, staring at my computer intently. I had no social media. The only pictures of me were the ones I had taken with a group, and there were so many emotions swirling through me. One that stood above all was confusion. The crippling fear was lurking in the shadows for now. How had this person gotten this picture of me? My mind went back to the light next to my camera, and one question was answered. Next, the paralyzing fear set in. I felt my heart stop completely, then beat violently in my throat and ears. My stomach dropped. My eyes searched furiously over the paper for any information about me. I felt relief at the fact that my full name, along with my address, weren't there. That all came crashing down when I realized that the person who had posted the ad had these, but chose not to put them in the description in case anyone were to grab me without paying. I knew without a doubt that the others were going to be sold too. I passed out. I woke up in the nurse's office, who told me I had a fever, and my mother picked me up and took me home. I went straight into my room and locked the door. I haven't touched my PC ever since. I put tape over my phone camera, even though I know my efforts are futile. Everything I hear now is someone out to get me. The only sick thing that comforts me every now and then is that the people that made me do this are going to be sold quicker than me. I don't know what I was thinking really. I had been drinking with friends and got home drunk. I decided to open Tor, and one link led to another. I ended up on a marketplace website that was selling all sorts of shady stuff. I could buy my own weight in cocaine if I saw fit, and had the money. Though something else caught my interest. A posting said, "Mystery box, made to order, $2.50. I read the description, which listed what it could contain. A brand new iPad. That was it. That was the thing that made me send the $250 worth of Bitcoin to some random guy in some random place on the internet. I had vague memories of sloppy messagings to the seller, and I really wanted that iPad. Oh God, I remember sending them an extra $50 to sweeten the deal. What a moron. When I woke, my head hurt. I had a full-blown migraine. It wasn't until I had breakfast, showered, and opened my laptop that I remembered. My heart sunk. I didn't have money to waste on shit like that. But I did. I clicked the button to message the seller to tell them I changed my mind, but nothing happened. I refreshed the page, and as you can imagine, the listing wasn't found. Now, I didn't think myself to be an idiot. I wouldn't fall for some 411 scams. I know no Nigerian prince wants to send me money. But drunk me? He's a bit questionable. I checked my Bitcoin account to see it tell me that I was out of untraceable money. I swear I had at least $750 in there. If you take the exchange rate of the day, with the way it fluctuates, it may have been only $300. I was depressed for the rest of the day. I promised myself I wouldn't do anything like that again. But then drunk me is a real, well, you know. Weeks passed, and I completely forgot about it, to be honest. And I didn't want to remember how stupid I had been. Today, though, I did remember. I walked downstairs to see a large brown box on the kitchen table, addressed to me. My dad must have received it from the mailman when he was getting ready for work. I stared at it, shocked to see that it had actually arrived. I picked it up. The weight was lopsided, but it was heavy. That was a good sign. At least it wasn't filled with packaging chips. I pulled off the tape and opened it up to reveal a lot of packaging chips, and I chuckled to myself before plunging my hand in. I pulled out an anonymous red sweater. I held it to my face. It smelt of perfume. It was used. I was slightly disgusted, but what did I expect from the dark web? I placed it on the table next to me. The next item was a set of keys. I examined them and wondered why on earth that was part of this parcel. It was literally like the guy just shoved some random things into a box and sent it. I was beginning to feel ripped off. I placed my hand in again and pulled out a small bag with a note attached. I knew what it was before I read it, and I was excited. A little thing to make the time pass more calmly, written in Sharpie. It was a good amount of weed. I'd never bought drugs off the internet, and I opened the bag to see it was the real deal, and that strong, smelly, skunky stuff rose up. I took a deep breath and sighed. I'd say it was about $70 worth, give or take, and I pushed it into my back pocket, worried that my mom would be up any minute and catch me. I was intrigued to see what was remaining. Maybe I'd make my money back. The next item was a small wooden box. I opened it to see a few pieces of silver jewellery, and I checked each one, having no idea if it was worth anything. There were 2 necklaces and 2 rings. I wondered if these were stolen or bought from a pawn shop. I placed it next to the red top. The next was another baggie, with another note written in Sharpie. "You'll need these, trust me, winky face." I was a little anxious when I read the note and saw a small box of Xanax inside. Why did I need anxiety medication? I was not one to dabble in prescription drugs. Weed a little and mushrooms was all I needed. I knew some friends who'd pay pretty good money for that. I had no idea how much they were worth though. I looked it up later. I assumed $50, so that was about $130 so far. And to be fair, for something off the dark web, if I only lost around half my money, I should count myself lucky. I fished around in the box again, and couldn't feel anything else. I picked it up to feel if it was still heavy, and placed it down and stood up. I reached all the way to the bottom, and felt something large and slender. I pulled it out. It was an iPad. Holy crap! Jackpot! It was slightly scratched, but it wasn't first generation. It was light and thin, and it was at least an Air. I was stoked. It was at that point that my mother popped her head around the corner. "Hey honey, did you get a package?" "Yeah," I said, suddenly aware I could smell the weed in my back pocket. "Hey, you found my sweater," she said, delighted. "Where was it?" Was all I mustered. She picked it up, and unconsciously the keys too. She walked away. I sighed, worried she'd smelled the drugs. "What's that?" she said, turning. "I'm holding it for a friend," I said without thinking. "What?" she said, not paying attention. "What's my jewellery box doing down here?" I stared at my mum, slack-jawed. She picked it up and opened it, studying if anything was missing. "Well, answer me," she demanded. "It was in the package," I said honestly. "Don't bullshit me. Were you going to sell this?" "No, I promise. Just wait until your dad gets home." "Jesus, Darren. I swear, this is not your stuff. It was in my package. I bought it off the net." "You expect me to believe you bought my exact top and jewellery box off the internet? Why in God's blazes would you do that?" "It was a mystery box. It could have contained anything." "You come up with such garbage sometimes. I think it's best you go to your room." "I'm 17, I said. "When you're under our roof, it's our rules." I picked up the iPad and went upstairs. I laid on my bed and turned the device on. I was surprised to see it still had power. A few non-standard apps appeared on the desktop as I swiped to unlock. Nothing of interest though. I checked the email program to see that it was blank. I was worried it was stolen. I knew I couldn't keep it if there were any personal data there. I checked the Photos app. There were about a dozen. I tapped the first. It was a low-light shot of a street. Could have been anywhere. I swiped the next, and it was the front of a house. The light was on in the front room, but in the low light, it overexposed the shot and made it hard to see any detail. The next was the side of a house. The horizontal white wood sliding looked slightly similar to ours. The next was of what appeared to be a rear door. Then one of a kitchen. I did a double take. The place looked identical to ours. Then one of a living room, the TV bright, and hiding the faces of the people who sat on the couch and chair. Then one of the stairs. The brown waxed wood of the floor was uncanny, and my heart thumped in my chest. Then one of the landing. There was no coincidence. This was our house. The family portrait that hung on the far side wall, even in the low light, was obviously ours. I panicked and didn't want to swipe again, but I did. My mother asleep on the bed, the bed covers pulled. The next view, the covers being pulled apart gently. My mother pulled her legs from the sudden cool air. The cupboard open, a black gloved hand reaching out and searching, the hand holding a red sweater. A dark photo with lines of light obscuring the view. Another dark photo. This time the exposure was better, and I could see it from the inside of the cupboard. My dad was in the room. Then next, my dad is in bed next to my mother. Then one of the bed with my parents asleep. I swiped again and saw the covers pulled back. Whoever was doing this wanted to be caught. I was sure of it. After that, in the hallway again, the black gloved hand was holding the jewellery box outstretched. Only one photo remained, and it was above a bed with someone sleeping below. It was me. My blood ran ice cold. I threw the iPad to the floor and heard it cracking against the side of my desk. I leaped up and saw the screen stare back at me with a rainbow mosaic of broken LCD and glass. What was I going to tell my parents? They'd never believe me. I'd pulled the bag of pills out of my back pocket and read the note again. You'll need these. Trust me. I turned it over to read a date. 21/07/2018. It must have been when the package was sent. I read it again and realized that it was tomorrow, Saturday. What does that mean? I have to warn my parents. If you don't hear back from me, call the authorities. I fear the worst.
Thank you guys for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.